Okay, so I thought we'd start with a little chanting. How's that sound? Good? Okay. So the Maha Mantra, just, top of the charts for God knows how long, a couple thousand years probably. I have a 9-year-old, almost 10, same birthday as her. Happy birthday, happy birthday. And he's a pretty good sport, so he comes with me to all my classes and most of the workshops I teach. And I took him on a bhakti retreat with all these Krishna people for 3 days. And he was a total good sport about it. And he's like kind of hanging out with everybody. And he'll do a little bit of singing. But by the 3rd day, he said, Mom, this is okay, but don't they know any other songs? Sorry, kid. It was all Hare Krishna for 3 days today. One day he'll look back on it and be like, yeah, that was pretty cool. Right now, not so much. So we'll start with 3 Oms, just to get on each other's page, get in the same wavelength. And it's almost like when you share an Om together, it's like you're all reaching into each other's hearts, and we're all connecting. We're turning this space, which is already a sacred space, to an even more precious and sacred space. So take a big inhale. Studying mantras, and he wanted to be the best at it. He wanted to know every mantra. He wanted to know how to practice, how to pronounce everything perfectly. And so he heard about this great master. Everybody said, well, this is the master you have to study from. He knows everything. And so he looks for this master. He goes all over the world, and he finally finds him in a remote cave in the Himalayan mountains. But to get there, he's got to get on a boat and row across this giant lake. And there's this wise sage waiting for him on the other side. And so he meets him, and he's so excited. And they're talking, and they're chatting, and they're having tea, and it's amazing, and he's learning so much. And they talk about this one mantra, and the young scholar realizes that the sage has been saying it wrong. And the sage is devastated. He said, wait, for 70 years I've been chanting that mantra, and I've been doing it wrong for 70 years? And this young up-and-coming guy was so happy that he could show something to the sage. He said, yes, all wrong, you've been doing it. And he teaches him the right way. And the sage says, oh, thank you so much for correcting me. And then it's time for the young guy to leave, and he gets back in his boat, and he goes across the water. And he's about halfway across, and it's really, really deep. And he feels a tap on his shoulder. And he turns around, and there's the sage standing on the water. And he says, excuse me, but I forgot the right way to say my mantra. Could you tell me again? So don't worry if you get it right, okay? So I'll sing it once, and then we'll do it together a few times, okay? You've probably heard it before. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama open up your eyes and arrive, and you just feel how you step right through that doorway. And the stories are even more potent now that we've walked through that mantra doorway. So I thought that we'd do some goddesses today, since we did Shiva on Friday and Shiva yesterday. It's time for a little, actually for all women in here, aren't we? All right, all female on the outside, but remember, like we talked about yesterday, what's on the inside, we're not man, we're not woman, we're all the same. And so these goddess energies, they're so interesting because you really find yourself in a lot of them. And it's also good, like we mentioned yesterday, like sometimes we need more. Like sometimes we need some Kali, right? You've seen Kali, she's the one with the blood dripping from her fangs and the garland of skulls and the skirt made of severed hands. It looks really scary. Well, some of us need a little more of that. You know, I have no Kali on me. I'm always like, come on, give me some Kali. And then some of us are all Lakshmi. It's just like luscious and generous and soft and fertile. And then some of us are Saraswatis, who are more aloof and more into art and creativity, right? Are you kind of getting like, oh yeah, that's me? Or and some of us are Radhas. Radhas are just crazy, lovesick maniacs. That's me. I need less Radha, more Kali. So all of these energies, they show up in different ways inside of us. And we have them all in us. And we have all the guys too. We've got Krishna, we've got Shiva, and then we've got all of that inside of us. But I thought it would be fun to compare and contrast some of the goddesses. And I know that you did some stuff with Saraswati in your teacher training, or in class yesterday, right? So we'll do Saraswati, and any other requests, or just whatever comes out of my mouth is okay. Is that okay? Okay, good.
Durga.
So what? Durga, yes. Durga, who comes into battle with a big furry cat between her legs. She's great. Okay, yeah, Durga too, definitely. Let me write it down. Down. Well, that's okay. Remind me when you get it. Thank you. I made a little list here. Durga is a good one. All right. So I thought we'd start with, thank you, with Lakshmi. Lakshmi is the one who is, we did yesterday her mudra, this granting blessings mudra. She's the goddess of abundance, of good fortune, of wealth, of generosity, and she's got this beautiful story. And she's like, Lakshmi is like when you get the most perfect, ripe, juicy peach. That's Lakshmi. Lakshmi is like the softest cashmere. That's Lakshmi energy. She's just utter luxury, utter generosity, and she just loves to give and give and give and give. In fact, there's one story, a little one about Lakshmi, where she wanted to give to anyone who had ever worshipped her. She wanted just to give them everything they ever wanted. And even if they hadn't worshipped her, she still wanted. So she says to her husband Vishnu, I'm going to go out and give everybody everything they've ever wanted. And she does. And she goes not just to the wealthy people, but she goes to the houses of the untouchables. And she gives them everything. And Vishnu gets mad. And Vishnu says, you shouldn't be going there. You know, it's dirty over there. And it's just not, like, come on, hang out with me in our nice temple, surrounded by our gardens and our gold. You don't need to go to the houses of the untouchables. And she says, how dare you? How dare you make me not be so generous with people? How dare you try to squash my generosity? And so because of this, I'm leaving and I'm going to go live with them. And she does. And she goes and she lives with the untouchables, and she herself becomes dirty and she doesn't even care. And of course, wherever she goes, abundance goes with her. And so now what's happening to the houses of these untouchables, these poor people, is that all their crops are growing, and all the money's just pouring in, and soon their houses are not dirty and dusty anymore. They're beautiful. They're almost like palaces. And Vishnu, back in his cold, lonely temple, his temple is starting to disintegrate. Because when Lakshmi goes, when that feminine sweetness goes, everything sort of dries up and gets hard and cold. And so he has to go shuffling over to the neighborhood where he doesn't want to go, and knock on the door and beg for her to come home. And she says, I will come home, only if you promise never to do that again. You must let me be unlimited in my giving. So that's the spirit of Lakshmi. She's just absolute, unlimited generosity. But she has no patience for people who just want money. So if you're just going to go after her and be like, come on, big money, she's not into that. You got to work really hard. If you work a little bit, you take a few steps towards her, then she'll take 1,000 steps towards you, but it's got to be a give and take. You got to want something that's like a really good, pure longing, and then you've got to take the steps to start working for it. And then she rewards you with everything you could ever imagine. All of that abundance and lusciousness and sweetness is all yours. She's like the sky as it's been lately with those big white puffy clouds. Blue sky, white puffy clouds, that's Lakshmi. Kind of get a sense of her essence. So she, wherever she goes, there's sweetness and joy and love and the feminine. So she's the divine feminine in the way of fertility and sweetness and abundance. And so once upon a time, there was a god named Indra. Do you know Indra? Indra's like the king of the gods. Bless you. And he's pretty much a narcissist. He's got a big ego. He really loves himself. He loves nothing more than when everybody thinks that he's just great and they pay attention to him. It probably sounds like some people we've met before. And he's just like, all he wants is for his subjects. And he's the one who's in charge of like the seasons and the sun and the moon and making sure that everything goes well. And so he's always walking around like, look at me, I do such a good job. And he, feels like he's just the most important of all the gods. And one day he's really feeling himself. And he's feeling like, you know what? I'm pretty awesome. I'm going to throw myself a parade. So he does, because he just wants everybody to love him. He wants everybody to pay attention to him. So he throws himself his very own parade, just so that he can get on his elephant and walk through town and have all the gods and goddesses adore him. And so he does. Meanwhile, there's a sage. The sage's name is Durvasa, and he's been meditating for a long time. He's a really powerful sage, a really wise sage, and he's been meditating so long that he's gotten really dirty. Just like yesterday in Parvati's story, she got dirty, the sun beat on her, the rain fell upon her. So same thing. So Durvasa's been in meditation for years. His clothes have disintegrated, his hair is all matted and tangled. When he wakes up, he opens his eyes finally at the end of this powerful meditation. Then there in front of him is a garland of lotus flowers, pink lotus flowers. It's so beautiful. And he recognizes this as a gift from the universe. Because of his deep tapas, because of his austerities and his deep, sincere meditation, the universe has offered him this gift. And he knows that this gift, the lotus flower, represents Lakshmi. This very garland that he's holding represents all of the sweet, fertile, female energy of the universe. And so he sees this garland and he knows that Indra's having this parade and he thinks, I should give it to Indra. And so he goes over to the parade with this beautiful garland. But of course he looks like a mess and he's probably pretty smelly and he's dirty. And Indra comes riding by on his elephant and Durvasa gives Indra the garland. And Indra doesn't even look at Durvasa. He just grabs the garland, he holds it for a while, and then as soon as he gets a little ways down the road, he tosses it onto the head of his elephant. The elephant is smart. The elephant knows that that was not a good thing to do. So the elephant flings it off of his head and stomps on it. And meanwhile, Durvasa is watching all this powerful sage who's even more powerful because he's been sitting in meditation for so long. And he looks at Indra and he's so hurt by what happened. And he says, because of this, because you have dishonored the divine feminine, you are going to lose all of your power. And he does. Pretty soon after that, all the gods and goddesses, not just Indra, but they all start to get weak and shrivel up. They all lose their power. And everywhere in the world, things are kind of dying. All the flowers have lost their scent. Even the prettiest rose doesn't have any more fragrance. All the couples are bickering. All the parents are mean to their children. There's no more generosity left. All the rulers are ruling with this iron hand. They're just raising taxes and they're just being awful. So everywhere you look, everything is falling into chaos and there's no more sweetness. There's no more lusciousness or love in the world. And so the gods go to Vishnu. And remember we said yesterday he's like the dad. So anytime something goes wrong, they actually go to Brahma first, but Brahma never knows what to do. And Brahma always says, I don't know, go to Vishnu. And so they all go to Vishnu and they say, what do we do? Now, Vishnu, he's been living with Lakshmi for a long time. So he knows her ways. And he knows that when she's dishonored, she doesn't scream. She's not like Kali. She doesn't like start dripping blood and go crazy and send her tongue rolling out along the battlefield. She just quietly slips away. Right? She doesn't make a big deal about it. But when abundance, when fertility and specifically that sweetness of divine femininity is not honored, she backs away until she just washes herself back into the great cosmic ocean. She slips under the surface and she's gone. She goes down into the depths. And so Vishnu knows this. And so he tells them, I know where she is. She's under the ocean. Don't worry. No fear. But we've got to get her back out. And it's not going to be easy. And because we're so weak and when we're so few and the demons are so many, the demons are so many. And that's an interesting thing about these stories too, that the demons always outnumber the gods by matrices, by so many. And remember, what else do they have? Mustaches and yoga, yes. Mustaches, did you know that? They all have mustaches. So he says we've got to work together with the demons, and we've got to call Lakshmi back from the floor of the ocean. And also with Lakshmi is going to come this sacred nectar that's going to give them all their power back. And so they go and get a mountain, and they put the mountain into the ocean. And this ocean is an ocean of milk, which also is fertility, right? It represents that divine feminine. And the ocean also represents all the possibilities of everything that could be, like all the stories that have yet to be written, all of our stories, all the possibility in our life. And it's everything that's been. It's that every time the world is recreated again and again, which, as you know, can happen in any breath, any day, it goes back to the ocean of milk where it gets churned up and brought to life again, and new stories are created. And so they put this mountain into the ocean, and they get a snake Vasuki, and they wrap it around the mountain. And then the gods get the tail, and the demons get the head. And the gods were smart. They let the demons pick first. And the demons think, oh, we want the head, of course. Gods were smart, though. So the demons get the head, the gods get the tail, and they start to churn. And that poor little snake, right? What do you think is happening as they're churning? He's like, and so that weakens the demons already. So now they're more of an even match, the gods and the demons, and they churn, and they churn, and they churn, but Lakshmi doesn't come. The first thing that comes is poison. And it's poison that's so powerful and so strong that it would destroy all the world. So strong, and everybody's freaking out. Like, what do we do with this poison? Right? And Shiva says, don't you worry, I've got this, right? And he drinks the poison. The poison is called a hala hala. It's kind of like a sound. That's it. If that choking had a word, it would be the name of this poison. And so Shiva takes the poison and he drinks it, but he doesn't let it go all the way into him. He holds it in his throat. And in one of the stories, I love this one, his wife Parvati says, don't you do that, that's so stupid, you're gonna kill yourself. And she runs over to him and she grabs him by the throat, kind of like even the Simpsons, like Homer does to Bart Simpson, like that. She grabs his neck and holds it so tight so the poison doesn't go down. In another story, there's a whole different demon that's causing havoc in another part of the universe, and Parvati jumps into Shiva's throat where the poison is, and she turns into Kali. So that's one of the stories about how Kali was born. She comes back out as this wild, fierce goddess. So he takes care of the poison. The poison is okay. We've learned how to take that difficulty, whatever that challenge is, and write it into the new story in such a way that the poison becomes the empowerment, actually. And so poison is taken care of. All these other wonderful things start to come out of the ocean, like the moon. The moon was lost, and so the moon comes out, and because Shiva did such a nice thing for everyone by taking the poison, he gets to put the moon in his hair. So that's why you see images, I don't know, I'm sure you have some here somewhere, images of Shiva. He's always got the moon in his hair, and then he's got the Ganga River pouring out the other side. It's another story for another day. And all these wonderful things, this gift-giving cow comes out, this tree of dreams comes out, and then finally, there she is. The seas part, and the first thing to come out is two beautiful white elephants. The most stunning, majestic elephants you've ever seen. And then right between the two elephants comes Lakshmi, and she's riding on this pink lotus, and she's got a red sari threaded with gold. She's got jewels, she's got coal on her eyes and bangles on her wrists, and she's completely gorgeous. Long, shiny, dark hair, eyes like gigantic almonds, skin that just glows, and everyone is just stupefied by her beauty. They're transfixed, and everybody wants her, of course. They're all like, oh, I want that. But she looks at Vishnu and she says, you're mine. And she walks over to Vishnu, and the moment she takes his hand, the whole world bursts into flowers. And the divine feminine returns. So that story, I think, what do you think? Does it have quite a bit that you can relate to? Especially when you think about it, there's all different levels. So there's whatever's happening in your own heart in the moment, right? Whatever your personal story or drama that you're going through in your life situation might be, you might find it on that level. You might find it on the level of your community, your family, sort of a second tier level. Or this one, can't you find it in a bigger sort of world stage society level? Whichever, doesn't matter which side of the road that you're on, but we can feel it, how things are churning, right? And how that idea of having to work together is really important. The gods do get the nectar, by the way. And you know how they do it? Vishnu turns himself into Mohini. And Mohini literally means irresistible delusion. And so he becomes this goddess who's just so gorgeous that everybody's tongue falls out of their mouth. And it's like, whatever she represents, whatever that thing is, we all have it. Probably, I have like 100 of them. I think it's like, oh yeah, I'm really on my spiritual path, but shiny thing. Or whatever it might be. And so the demons, of course, lose their minds, and she's able to steal the nectar back from them. And they regain their power. But where do you feel? Anybody else see themselves in there, or have any comments? Or
what was the name of the nectar? Isn't there a name?
Amrit.
Amrit.
Yeah, Amrit is the nectar of immortality.
What was the god you just talked about? The one.
Vishnu, who became the irresistible delusion.
Yes, so that was Vishnu.
That was Vishnu. He
That's
turns
funny.
into
I think we all go
Mohini.
through that, like not just you, where you have like 100 of them. You feel like you're like on the right path, and then so many shiny blinky things. That
So many things. Yeah, you get knocked off a little bit, and then you get back on.
That's like a part of the spiritual path too, right? Like,
Yeah, the Yoga Sutra says there's a whole list. It's chapter 1, I think, Sutra 30 or 31. Which one is? Do you know the one where he lists all the things that happen to you? It's like, okay, you're doing this yoga
31.
thing. 31. It's like, you're going to experience this. Like, lust, delusion, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sickness, all these things. And it's like, okay, by the way, that's part of it. You're human. Don't let it knock you off your path. Yeah, it's a really good reminder if you ever start to feel like, because we can experience all of those things before breakfast. Right? So if you ever start to feel disheartened, go to that one and go, oh yeah, any of these happening? Yep, I'm normal, good. Keep going.
Which sutra was it?
What?
Which
131.
31.
Yeah. And then the next one says, then, because of those things, then you'll start to have shortness of breath. Like, it really tells it like it is. Which at first, when I remember, I even have in my sutra, my first sutra book, right next to it, I crossed it out and it says, that's a downer. Like, I just didn't even want to think about it. I was like, no, that's never going to happen to me. Right? Like, before you've ever had an injury, you're just like, I'm invincible. And then you realize, whoa, this being human thing, wow, it's not always so easy. And sometimes there's some poison, right? And that's like, too, that part of the story is so beautiful, because we come to you. How many people started doing yoga because they just thought they'd be happy all the time? Like all those yogis in the pictures that look so peaceful, right? Like, I just want to be a yogi because nothing ever bothers them. And then you start really practicing. Well, that's when we lose some people. Like, there's that initial yoga high, and people are like, this is the best thing ever. And then it takes maybe about 3 months usually before they realize, oh, I really have to do some work here. And then half the people go, okay, I'm going to go do Pilates instead. And the crazy ones like us, they stick around because you're not afraid of the hala, you're not afraid of the poison, and you're willing to work with the demons and the shadow side, and you're willing to put the work in. An interesting part of that story too is that when they churn, the mountain, this is a mountain that they just picked up like a regular mountain, so it still has trees on it, and it still has flowers and herbs and all the things that a mountain would have. And so as they're churning, this is really violent. This is not like a little pansy, haha, we're just gonna spin this a little. This is like, oh, and everybody's sweating and they're passing out and falling down, and the trees are crashing on the mountain, and they're burning. And so the trees are falling, and the trees get set on fire, and they're tumbling down the mountain. And as they tumble down, they take with them all of the herbs and all of the flowers, so that all of this stuff is being put into the ocean. So that's telling you something. Like, this is not passive, this yoga thing. You've got to put in some major work. You've got to sweat, and you've got to, and this, by sweat, I don't mean like kill yourself in 1,000 power yoga classes a week, but like really like sweat when you start to sit there on your mat and get uncomfortable, or when you're meditating, or when you're bumping up against those habits, the shiny things that we just don't want to give up. All of that, and you got to put the work in. You got to put the magic in to get the magic out of it. It's not just gonna hand it to you on a silver platter. You know, like the word nirodha, when we say yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Nirodha, that word is like, it's strong. It doesn't say do yoga and your mind will get quiet. It says you've got to squash the turnings of the mind. You've got to be relentless, like with a strong arm about stopping them. So that story kind of gives you a hint into that too. Good stuff, right? Yeah. Okay, I thought we would combine our Lakshmi and our Saraswati. We're going to do Saraswati next. So we're going to do a mantra to both of them. And so Lakshmi, her seed sound is Hrim, H-R-I-M. And Saraswati's is Aim, A-I-M. So you'll hear that in the chant. It's Om Hrim Mahalakshmiye Namaha Om. And then Om Aim Saraswatiye Namaha Om. So we'll do call and response. We'll go back and forth a little bit. So Lakshmi, when you sing Om Hrim Mahalakshmi Namaha Om, you think about that idea of generosity and abundance, and how you gotta be willing to give it away first. Right? I think Sharon Cannon said that. So if there's anything you want, you gotta be willing to give it away first. So you give it away, and then it comes back to you 1,000-fold. So calling on abundance and grace. Mahalakshmi Namaha. Try that. So Lakshmi is all luxury and cashmere and silk and gold. Lakshmi is like Beyonce.
Totally. She's behind you.
Oh my God, Beyonce! Right? And she's got the one hand that's facing out in Abhaya Mudra. We did that one Friday too, I think. And then this other hand that's just showering unlimited blessings. But the mudra that I wanted you to take for today is to take this one with a lotus mudra. The outer edges of the hands come together. And the middle three fingers open out, and you can take it right in front of your heart, and then let your eyes softly close and invite your spine to grow a little taller. Feel yourself plugged in. Imagine your sitting bones. Put little anchors on them, roots that go way, way, way down to the very bottom of the pond, and they lodge themselves down into the mud. And then feel your spine start to rise, the crown of your head like the bud of a lotus flower that's looking for the sun. It's trying to climb out of the murky depths from the floor of the ocean, right, rising up. And so this is the mudra for love and compassion, especially compassion for ourselves and this wild, crazy roller coaster ride we call being human. And for those times when you might fall back into the ocean a little bit and retreat and need to call yourself back. Or for times when the world feels a little bit shaky and you know it's time to really dig in, to put the gloves on and to start stirring. Right? Sometimes we need that reminder that we need this mudra to help bolster us, to give us the strength and compassion to be able to work with the shadow side. Right, to not ignore the darkness. So take a few breaths and pour them right into your heart as you do. Pour them right down into it and let the breath wash through there. Let it wash away any of those little tight pebbles. You know, when we get upset with someone or we feel resentful or hurt, those things form little pebbles in the heart. And if you're not careful, those little pebbles can turn into big boulders. So you have to be diligent and consistent about washing the heart, keeping those little pebbles really tiny or washing them away until they're gone, so they don't grow into big stones. And then you can fold your palms into prayer, Anjali Mudra. And let your hands rest on your thighs, open your eyes if they were closed. It's a really lovely mudra. It's fun to use it in vinyasa. You know, you can lift it up and let it open, and so pretty. That's almost like the elephant showering the ocean of milk on Lakshmi, or Lakshmi rising up from the ocean on her lotus flower. It's so fun. What?
It's dramatic.
It's very Beyonce, isn't it? So much fun. So the opposite of Lakshmi is Saraswati. And whereas Lakshmi came out and she was all decked out in her silk saris and her jewels and her eyeliner and the whole deal, when Saraswati came to be, all she had on was a white cotton sari. So simple. 4 arms, and she just had in her 4 arms a mala. And not even a fancy colorful mala, just a crystal mala. A pot of water. What's more simple than that? Her instrument, her veena, which is the one that looks like a gourd on the bottom and it has the really long neck, and some books. She's like the patron saint of introverted book nerds. That's why I love her so much. She's really cool. Saraswati, she's like, she's music. She's like the twinkly piano sounds of Mozart, or sort of the ethereal pull of a violin string. That's Saraswati. She's aloof. She's got a distance about her, but it's not a cold distance at all. It's more a thoughtful distance. And she really cares way more about matters of the spirit than she does about living a conventional life. So Saraswati people often feel like they live a little bit on the outskirts, and probably if you do yoga, you feel that a little bit, right? That sort of pull towards something different. Like, I don't think I'm really supposed to be here in this life, right? Do you ever feel like that? Like, there's gotta be something else. Like, this is nice and all, but that search, that pull in your heart that makes you search for deeper meaning in things, that's the sign that you got a lot of Saraswati. She's like that moment when you just can't even deal with the world and you just go in your room and you shut the door and you put your headphones on. That's Saraswati. You have some of that in you? Anybody feel like, yes, to who? How would you? Yeah, completely. Who's a Lakshmi? Anybody was like, yeah, Lakshmi. Not, that's so funny. I think that you are.
I'm a little.
You feel it a little?
Yeah, especially when you said that when she gets mad, she doesn't get angry. She just kind of backs away from everything. I'm very much that. When I'm angry and I'm quiet, that's when my boyfriend's most scared. Like, I just walk away calmly and go do something else. He's like, oh no.
And does he have to do a little work to get you back?
Yeah.
Like, I gotta coax her back from the depths, and how can I honor this woman again? Yeah. Interesting.
I see
think
some bling over here.
Oh, I know. The Lakshmi in you is the one who wants, like, goes on a date and gets so excited about, what am I gonna wear? Yeah. I think it's hard for us to admit it because we don't think of it. Like, it's hard to say, yes, I am sexy and fertile and voluptuous and generous. Like, it's hard to own that. It's much easier, I think, for us to say, no, I'm introverted and cranky, and but to actually own that sweetness and can sometimes be hard. So I think we do. I can see it in all of you. Lots of Lakshmi. I had it. Do you know Manoj Chalam? He sells the statues, the murtis, and he goes to all the yoga journals and stuff, and he can look at you and tell you who you are. And he told me I was Lakshmi. I'm like, no way, I'm not. No, I don't even get her. I don't understand her. I want to be Kali. So it goes. I've come to love Lakshmi now. But Saraswati, so she's got that kind of cool aloofness about her, and she actually didn't start out as a goddess. She started out as a river. Saraswati, it means she who flows, or more correctly translated, it's sort of going this way, going the way of going. So she's the one who goes, which is why she can be hard to hold on to sometimes. She's got that like when you go to the beach and you want to just hold that sand and remember this beautiful moment, and the tighter you squeeze it, the more it slips through your fingers and you open your hand and it's gone. Saraswati's like that. She's a little hard to grasp. She's the goddess of creativity, music, art, poetry. And if you're any sort of artist, you understand that. Like, it's not, you can't just go, okay, I'm gonna sit down and write a hit song right now, or I'm gonna write my novel right now and it's gonna be amazing. Like, you kind of have to work with the muse and the universe, and it's a give and take, and it's not always there when you want it. So she's got that kind of like, I'll come when I'm ready, thank you, kind of a thing. So in the beginning, Brahma created the world, but he made a giant mess of it, huge mess. So he created everything, but when he looked around at what he made, it was just a total disaster. And he didn't know what to do. Typical guy, right? Didn't know. Makes a big mess of everything and then says, help me, can you make it beautiful for me? But he didn't know what to do, and so he decided he was going to ask Saraswati. So there were 3 rivers in India, right? The Ganga and the Yamuna and the Saraswati. Now there's only 2. Because Saraswati River, who was flowing through India, and she would overflow her banks onto the sides of the river so that all the people could grow crops, and she would nourish them that way. That was her way of giving abundance and giving nourishment, was by overflowing and feeding people. And so Brahma thought, well, maybe she'd be a good one to help me bring some beauty into this world. And so he asked her if she would please become a goddess. And I know you like being a river. I know you like spilling out and overflowing your banks and giving people things, but how about you give me a favor here and help me make some beauty out of this mess I've made? And so she does. She becomes a goddess. And like I said, she's just simple. She doesn't need any fancy clothes. She doesn't need jewelry. She's got her books. That's all she needs. And so she sets to the job of making things beautiful. And she uses art. She uses the power of speech. She's the goddess of Vak, of speech. Saraswati, she sits right on the tip of your tongue. That's why Brahmins will never touch their tongue, because Saraswati lives there. Do you see how they drink? They drink like that. They'll never put their mouth on it because they'll drown Saraswati. I don't know if they'll drown her, but but that's where she's supposed to be. And so she makes sense of everything. She makes that, and that makes total sense, doesn't it? Through poetry, through art, through music, she brings harmony and order to a world that was a mess. And anybody a writer or any kind of artist, right? And don't you feel like when you're crazy in your head and you write something down or you paint something or you sing a song, it's like, oh, things make sense a little more now. That's because of Saraswati. And so she does all of this for Brahma. She creates all this beauty and all this harmony, and Brahma falls in love with her. And he can't stop looking at her. And he's staring at her with big googly love eyes. And Saraswati does not need your attention. Saraswati does not need your approval. Sound familiar? Right? You have some of that. Saraswati does not need your affection. She's fine. She'll take it when she wants it, but she's not going to beg you for it. And if you're giving it to her, she probably doesn't want it. I think she likes the chase more. And so Brahma's like, just following her wherever she goes with his big love eyes. And she can't stand it. And so she goes behind him. And he sprouts another head in the back. I know, this is like the original stalker. And so she says, fine, I'll go over here. And she goes to the side. And of course, what does he do? Sprouts another head, and then she goes over there, another head. And so he's got these 4 heads, so wherever she goes, he can look at her. And so what does she do? She says, that's it, I am out of here. And she goes up. And Brahma sprouts a 5th head that goes up, 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 up afterwards. Meanwhile, Shiva's watching all of this, and Shiva's thinking, this is not cool. Leave her alone. Come on. He doesn't like it. He goes and he chops off Brahma's 5th head. So that's why Brahma has 4 heads. And Saraswati, she lives separate from everybody else. She doesn't she can visit them when she wants to, but she also has her own things. Like, I really don't need you. I'm fine all by myself. I'm fine with my books. I'm fine with my music. I don't need you. And so she lives above them all, and occasionally she visits, and there's one story about one of those times. So Brahma, she is technically Brahma's consort. Even though they don't live together, they have a really unconventional relationship. But one time Brahma decides that he wants to solidify his power by having a yajna, which is a fire ceremony. And he consults all the different gods and then the priests, and they decide that this 5-hour window on this particular day is exactly the time that you've got to do this. And it's much more powerful when both the masculine and the feminine are represented. And so Brahma needs Saraswati by his side, or else this whole ritual is not going to work. And so he tells her, this is important to me. Will you please do this for me? And she says, yes, of course I'll do this for you. Of course I will. And the time comes. Everyone is assembled, and the priest is there, and the fire is made, and Brahma's looking at his cosmic watch, like, okay, it's 11:59. She's got to be here at 12. Where is she? She's not there. She has every intention of going. She really does. But she's reading, she's studying, she's reading, and she just can't stop reading the Vedas. She's the mother of the Vedas. And so she's reading, and she hasn't quite gotten dressed yet. She'll be there. She will be there, but she's just running a little bit late. But Brahma, he already thinks she's not coming. So he says to Indra, Indra's the one who's in charge. Remember, Indra's got to be in charge of everything. He says to Indra, listen, you're in charge of this. Can you please go and find me another wife? Because this one is not going to show up. And so Indra does. Indra goes, and he runs, and he finds the first woman he can see, and it's a little mistress of the fields whose name is Gayatri, and a little milkmaid. And so Indra explains to Gayatri, listen, here's the situation. Brahma needs a wife. Gayatri says, no way, Saraswati is his wife. I can't do that. And then Indra really explains it. He says, look, we've got 5 hours. She's not coming. You really got to do this, okay? And so finally they convince Gayatri to say yes. Gayatri goes back. She takes the seat next to Brahma. They start just about to begin the ceremony. And in walks Saraswati. Oh, it's like a soap opera, isn't it? Saraswati sees Gayatri in the wife's seat next to Brahma, and she says, husband, I know what you've done, and I will never forgive you for this. Meanwhile, she really kind of doesn't care that much. She's like, good. Saraswati, she probably will never get jealous if you flirt with or steal her man, but if you dare steal her idea, that's, you know, like Mozart and Salieri, it's like that kind of a thing. That's just, I don't care. Like, take the man. I don't care. You can have the man, but don't ever beat me creatively. That's Saraswati. And so she kind of makes a show of it, like, I know what you've done, and then she curses them all. She says to the priest, she says, we're here because this is a really powerful time right now, right? And the priest says, yes, that's why we had to do it now. She says, oh, good. Then my curses will be extra potent. And so first she curses Brahma, of course. She says, you, because of what you've done, you will never be worshipped but for 1 day a year. And that's why there are no Brahma temples, and he's only worshipped once a year. And she says to Indra, you 1 day will lose all of your power. And we just heard that story, right? And then she says to Vishnu, you watched this and you didn't say anything. So you are going to lose your beloved. You're going to have to search far and wide and cross oceans and fight a war to find her. That's when he becomes Ram and he loses his Sita. And to Shiva, she says, you, remember Friday's story? Oh no, yesterday, it was yesterday's story, the beginning of it. She says, your wife is going to get so mad one day, she's just going to burst into flames. And so she's the one who predicted all of that. So she's fierce, you know, she's really, don't cross Saraswati. So they do have the ceremony, and with Saraswati on one side and Gayatri on the other side. Now a little time goes by, and Saraswati and Gayatri meet one day in the forest. And you think it would be like, you stole my man. Not at all. Saraswati says, thank you so much for being there when I couldn't. And she says, and you're me. And with that, the two merge and become one. So they were the same after all. So Brahma didn't really cheat on her. So Saraswati, she's the one that you call upon when you need creative vision, when you need to really, when you feel like you just need to step away from the mundane day-to-day, right? She's not interested in that. And sometimes we can be too much like that. Like sometimes people with a lot of Saraswati have problems being in relationships because it's, they don't show up on time, or they're too busy reading. It happens. So they all these goddesses and gods, all these aspects, they have a really positive side, and they also have a shadow side too, right? Like the Lakshmi shadow side could be a little too much into the glam and the materialism and the showiness, and a little too like kapha, and we studied some Ayurveda, like the heavy sort of, the heaviness of it, right? And Saraswati can be a little too vata, a little too like, on the edges and not quite in the thick of things. So it's very interesting to be honest about your own heart, and what do I need a little more of, and what can I work on, and you can go and look it up, go Google it and say, okay, what's a Saraswati puja, and what are some mantras, and you can start working with them to heighten that energy in yourself. Fun, right? So Saraswati's in the house. Yeah. I wish I was. I really wish I was Saraswati. Okay, we're going to talk about Radha in a moment. But first I thought we'd move a little bit. Feel good to move, right? So we're going to add some mudras. Yeah.
I've heard that there's a story about Parvati and Saraswati. Is that
Parvati and Saraswati. No, I don't know. I mean, they're probably, I don't know every story.
Right.
But I know a lot, yeah.
I didn't know.
You don't know any other little detail or
Well, I know
anything?
that they, at some point they are very closely bonded, but then they don't get along and they bump heads, and then
Oh, I don't
they have like a
know.
very interesting kind of dynamic
I'm
together.
gonna look it up.
Yeah. I just didn't
It's
know
so interesting, and every sort of like, you know, like certain, the Shiva people think that Saraswati came from Shiva and belongs to Shiva, and the Vishnu people think, oh, she belongs to Vishnu, and it's sort of, they're like that, like, you know, every different sect claims each god and goddess for their own, and they have their own backstory on it, and their own whole mythology, and so you can find, it's so interesting, like I tell you certain stories, but if you go to look it up, you might find something totally different. Because I've chosen the one, I usually try to choose the girl power ones because a lot of them are not so girl power. They're all like, put the girl in her place, girl has to be quiet. So I tend to pick the ones that are a little more pro-female. But yeah, I'll look that up. Good question. There's one more fun little Saraswati story about a demon who does a lot of yoga, right? So he's getting really, really powerful. And Brahma sees that pretty soon he's going to have to give this demon a boon. And so this demon also happens to be the brother of the demon who stole Sita, Ravana. And so this is Ravana's brother, his older brother, and he's doing all his yoga and doing all his tapasya, and he's getting super, super strong. This fire starts to burn in him, and Brahma's freaking out. He thinks, I got to give this guy a boon, but he's a bad guy. What am I going to do? And so he goes to Saraswati, and Saraswati meditates on it for a moment. Then she says, I know what to do. His boon that he's going to ask for is Nirdevata. It's a world without gods. So she says, I'm going to go and sit on his tongue. And she does. At the moment that Brahma is about to come and ask the demon what boon he would like, Saraswati goes and makes herself tiny, and she lands right on the tongue of the demon, so that when Brahma says, what would you like your boon to be? All the demon can say is Nidratva, which means sleep. I want to sleep. so she puts him to sleep. So Saraswati, that idea of the tip of the tongue and right speech, you know, which is really important right now too. Saraswati is the goddess of the real truth, right? The ability to discern too, like with what you read and what you see and what you hear, what's real, what's not. You know, what's honest to goodness truth, and where am I being led astray? And am I speaking? You know, everything that I'm speaking, is it true? Like the Yoga Sutra says, if you start to really practice truthfulness, then everything that you say happens, right? When you become perfected in satya, truthfulness, then everything that comes out of your mouth turns into truth. So be really careful with what you say, and that's Saraswati too, the goddess of speech. So come, you don't need a mat at all. You're just going to come to stand anywhere, and actually better off without a mat, I think, because we're going to do a little balancing. So 2 mudras I'm going to show you. The first one is Ushas Mudra, and all it is the hands clasped. And they say that for women, the right thumb should be between the left thumb and first finger. But we know that we're not just women, we're both inside. So we're going to switch it back and forth today, okay? So first the left thumb is on top, and you're holding this mudra. It's called Ushas, which means the break of day, or the inviting in of all good things. And when you feel it, feel your 2 feet firmly on the ground, about hip width apart. And then breathe down into your pelvis and the sacral area, right in the low belly there, the second chakra, Svadhisthana. And that's a seat of creativity for us, for sure. That's where the bubbling of ideas begin. And so this mudra is for creativity that comes from below. And then what we're going to do, don't change anything yet, just watch me. We're going to take that mudra, flip it upside down, and reach up, 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 up. And then this is Saraswati. The right foot's going to step behind the left, and we'll do a sweet little delicate curtsy. And then we're going to take another mudra as we come up, Hakini mudra. And this one, the tips of the fingers come together, and you're going to cross your ankle over your thigh and sit down just as low as you can. And this is like all the image of Saraswati. She's got one leg up and one foot down to show that she's sort of in this world, but also not quite in this world. And she's seated with her instrument on her lotus. So we're going to be like seated Saraswati in the world, but not completely. And in this, was that her back there? Oh, that's so great. And this one here, this is the mudra for creativity that comes from above. So we'll get that kind of primal creativity, and then we'll also get that creativity that's like two sides of the brain working together to make sense of things, Hakini mudra. And we'll do that a few times, okay? We'll do it twice on each side. So come to standing just in your Tadasana. And you can release your mudra and shake it out for a moment. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And then with left thumb on top, take your Ushas mudra. All the good things, inviting them in, feeling the power in your low belly and sacrum. And then press your palms out. Keep them interlaced, but reach them all the way up to the sky. And then as you release them, right foot steps behind left, and you wing your arms back and take a really sweet bow, like you've just performed a symphony, and you're saying thank you to all your fans. And then come on up and hook your right ankle over your left thigh and take that Hakini mudra. So you really have to go inside for this one, otherwise you topple right over. And it's fun to try to feel, where are my hands in space, right? When they touch, and you sink, 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 sink. Feel that right thigh roll out, sitting bones widen, and then stand right back up in Tadasana and drop your arms by your side. Close your eyes for a moment and feel. Listen to the music of your breath. The music of the breath, how it brings harmony to the chaos of the mind. And then we'll try that again. So switching up the grip, when you're Ushas mudra, put the right thumb on top this time and hold your hands. And then press arms out and up, stretch to the sky. When you can't reach up anymore, step the left foot behind the right, swing the arms back and take a bow. And then go slow, coming up, bringing the tips of the fingers together and the left ankle over the right thigh, Hakini mudra, with half ankle to knee. And you let the hips melt as you go down, 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 but there's still such a lightness about it. And then step into Tadasana and drop your arms by your side. Close your eyes, take a full breath in. And then a full breath out. She who flows, let the breath be like a river. Full breath in. And all the way out. And then hands coming together in front of you. Left thumb on top, Ushas mudra. Press the palms out, reach the arms up to the sky. Right foot behind, left foot, swing the arms back, Saraswati. And then coming up, Hakini mudra, fingers touch as the right ankle hooks over the left thigh. And maybe you even go a little deeper this time as you melt the hips down. And then step down, Tadasana, arms by your side, just one breath in. And all the way out, and then last time, Ushas mudra, right thumb on top, hands in front of you. Press the palms out, reach them up to the sky. And then swing them down, take the left foot behind the right. And then coming up, Hakini mudra, left ankle over right thigh. Feel when the hands touch, that electric energy. And then lower your seat down, down, down. That's it. And then come up to stand, Tadasana, arms by your side. Deep breath in, deep breath out, and shake it around a little bit. Oh, yeah. Okay, you need more movement or more stories? Movement? Okay, good. Lotus mudra. Take your lotus mudra right in front of your heart. Reach your arms up like you're Lakshmi rising from the ocean, and then open wide and fly through the sky all the way down to the ground. Step your right leg back. Lower the knee down unless that hurts your knee. If the floor is too hard, you can keep your knee lifted. That's fine too. Reach your arms up to the sky. So we're going to move on to Radha. Okay, this is Radha. Radha's like, she's absolute longing. She's total love sickness. Take one more inhale, open your heart more, and then drop your hands downward facing dog, step back. From downward facing dog, just drop down to your knees. Sit back on your heels. Are you okay? If you're not okay like that on your shins, you can put a blanket or just swing your legs around in front of you. Take your hands, we did this one yesterday too, wrist cross. Backs of the hands face each other. Hook your pinky, hook your ring finger, hook your middle finger, touch your thumb and index together. Don't worry, we're going to do it again. So remember the mantra guy, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's perfect just the way it is. Bring it right in front of your heart. Anybody remember what it's called? Cross your wrist first. Just making up new ones. And then, yeah, hook, hook, hook. There it is. And then little Pac-Man with your Yana Mudras. Yana Mudra, thumb and index. Yay! Everybody got it? What's it called? Who remembers? What? No, Garuda's that one. Close though. Close, close, close. Abhaya. What? You know the meaning?
I don't know the name. I think it's the one where it's everything's okay in your heart.
Yeah, Abhaya Hridaya. Fearless heart mudra. Fearless heart mudra. So we'll have a story about this one in a moment. The cave of the heart. So you drop right down into that cave. And then release your mudra. Walk your hands out, downward facing dog. And you can look forward and step or hop forward. And come all the way up. Touch your palms together above your head and bring your hands down to heart center and make your lotus mudra. Open it up. And then like Lakshmi, rising from the floor of the ocean, lift it up, reach for the sky, and open wide. Fly back into the cosmic milky ocean all the way down and step your left leg back. Bring your knee down and your arms up and put the quality of longing into it. And almost there's a little bit of desperation. And that's an okay thing in Radha's story. It's not, see, she's the opposite of Saraswati. Saraswati's never desperate. Radha's desperate. Bring your hands down, step back, downward dog, and then drop down to your knees, sit on your heels, or any way you want to sit. And that is hard enough to do it that way. Now we're going to do it the other way. So change the cross of your wrist. Put the other one in front, the one that feels a little strange. And then hook pinkies. Hook ring finger, hook middle finger. Wow. I know, like, what? Whose hands are these? I know, right? And you just do the best you can and bring it right in front of your heart. And then take a moment and think about someone who you love so much that instantly every cell in your body lights up and starts to smile. Right? That person that you would do anything for, or maybe it's a dog or a cat. And it can be somebody who's still in your life or somebody who's not in your life anymore. And in particular, if they're not anymore, just notice, do you love them any less? No, right? Maybe even more. So, you don't have to answer this. I'm just going to plant the seed for right now. Question is, where does the love come from? Does it come from that other person? Does it come from somewhere in you? If so, where? How does it come to be? What gives it life? Why does it arise? Where does it go? And then you can let your mudra go. And come on back. I missed you. Come close.
What was that word you said yesterday that was like the vibe of the room or something like that?
Love? I don't know.
It was like, you were like, what's the Leela?
No, I don't think
Oh, was that what we were talking about?
Yeah.
It wasn't
I
TT.
know.
Yeah, but it wasn't that. Oh. It was.
I don't know. Is in the
something you
Shiva
said.
story?
Maybe it wasn't too shy. Yeah, never mind. You're right.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember. So. We're going to do a little Radha chant. we talk about her like she's a queen. Radharani. Rani means queen. Radharani ki jai. Ki jai is like, yeah, we love you. We love you. Radharani ki jai. Maharani ki jai. The greatest queen. Maharani. Bolo. Bolo means sing. Bolo Radhe. That's her name. Govinda. That's Krishna, the protector of the cows. Govinda. Ki jai jai jai. Just love you, love you, love you. So call and response, okay? Sing it with me. Radharani ki jai, Maharani ki jai. Maharani ki jai, Maharani ki jai. Radharani ki jai, Maharani ki jai. Radharani ki jai, Maharani ki jai. Bolo Radhe Govinda ki jai jai jai. 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 Radharani ki jai, Maharani ki 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 jai. Bolo Radhe Govinda ki jai jai 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 jai. Radhe Radhe Shyam, Bolo Radhe Radhe Shyam. 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 Bolo Radhe Govinda ki jai jai jai. 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 Bolo Radha was just a normal girl who loved somebody so fiercely that somebody was Krishna that she turned into a goddess. Basically, she's like the goddess of all goddesses, just through the sheer power of her wild, crazy, not of this world love. Like obsessive love that can border on a little fatal attraction-y love. But the whole point is that regular love doesn't open the doorway that kind of Radha love opens. It's through that doorway, like that feeling of first falling in love, right? And like everything is better, like flowers smell better, and the sun is somehow all of a sudden brighter, and the sky is bluer, right? Everything is more alive when you feel that kind of love. And so Radha Shakti, that kind of energy, it's the way in to feeling that for everything all the time. Wouldn't that be amazing? And the way in is by loving somebody. It could be anybody. It could be your kid, it could be your parent, it could be your partner, it could be your cat. It could be anything, but you practice loving it so fiercely, like so much. I know in yoga we always talk about detachment, and that's a really good thing. But this is kind of the opposite of that. But it does eventually lead to detachment. That's the good news. But it's just loving someone so fiercely that they're all you can think about all the time. Like every heartbeat is just beating their name, and every cell in your body has their name written on it. It's that kind of love. So that's how she felt about Krishna. Just completely nuts over Krishna. And she was one of the gopis. Have you ever heard of them? The gopis that lived in the forest with Krishna and Vrindavan, and they all grew up together. And they were little. They were like my kids' age, like 10 years old, and playing in the forest and dancing at night. And they just loved each other. All the gopis, all the cow herding maidens loved Krishna so much. Everybody loved Krishna. Everybody in the whole village. They didn't quite know why. They just knew there was something about this boy. They loved him. And he loved all of them so much. That's why he came there. And there was one gopi in particular who loved Krishna with a love that was beyond anything else. And that was Radha. And he felt the same way about her. And they would dance and they would sing. He would play his flute. And he would tell the gopis, listen, if you're serious about this, if you're serious about wanting to hang out with me and dance with me, then when you hear my flute, you run, okay? I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you're cooking. I don't care if it's the middle of the night and you're in bed with your husband. I don't care if you're feeding your baby. You drop everything and you run, right? That's spirit. That's the call of the divine. It's asking that of you. It's saying you can't be half-assed about this spiritual thing. You can't be sort of lukewarm about your yoga practice. This is asking that you go all in 10,000% with so much love. And so in the middle of the night, one night, and it's a perfect, hot, sultry August night, the moon is full, and the whole forest is blooming with flowers, and they're so fragrant, just one little blossom of jasmine would intoxicate the whole city of Naples. That's how amazing that night was. And all the stars are shining, and in the middle of the night, Krishna plays his flute. And all the gopis, they hear it. Some of them are in bed. Some of them are still cooking. They run out of their house, and they're not even dressed. They're half dressed. They have clothes falling behind them. They're struggling to put their bangles on and their bells on their ankles, and they run to where they hear the flute. And it's in a clearing in the middle of the forest. And so they all begin to dance. And Krishna, he multiplies himself. And so he dances with every one of the gopis. Each one of them has her own Krishna, and they're swirling and they're twirling around and around, and the anklets are banging and ringing, the bells are ringing, and everything is great until one gopi looks around and she sees Krishna with the other girls, and she says, "What? Excuse me? I thought you were with me." And the moment she does that, her Krishna disappears. And then one by one, each of the gopis breaks the spell. They look around, they get jealous. They forget about the Krishna that's right in front of them, and they start to worry about what everybody else is doing with their Krishna. And each one loses her Krishna until all that's left in the middle of the circle, dancing and dancing, is Krishna and Radha. Krishna and Radha, Krishna and Radha, there they are. Radha never once takes her eyes off Krishna. She doesn't care what anybody else is doing. Rumi is a Radha. Right? Rumi used to say, just who cares? Let other people worry about it going badly. You let the lover be. Be a disgrace, he would say. Just be a disgrace. Don't worry about your reputation. So that's the energy of Radha. Radha did not care what anybody thought about her. Not at all. Radha would make out with the trees. No kidding. She would go around when Krishna wasn't around. She would see him everywhere. And she would deliver the milk from the cows, and she'd put it on people's doorsteps and go, "Come get your Krishna. Here's your Krishna." And she would look at all the flowers and go, "Oh, it's Krishna." And she saw Krishna in the trees, and she would kiss the trees, and people thought she was bonkers. But she didn't care because she was so in love. Right? That's the kind of love we're talking about. This is not normal love. This is really extreme kind of love that just forgets about everything else, doesn't care what people think. And so Radha, her and Krishna, they never lose eye contact. And then they go off and they sit by the banks of the river, and she's laying in Krishna's arms, and they're having this super sweet moment. And in the middle of this really beautiful, intimate moment, she starts screaming. She starts yelling, and she's pounding her fists in the air, and she's weeping. And Krishna is like, what is going on with this girl? But then he realizes what's going on is that she already feels separated from him. she already knows that in a moment, it's not going to be like that forever. They're not going to be able to stay wrapped up in each other's arms on the side of the river forever until the end of time. And so she's anticipating that separation, and it drives her mad. Like, can you imagine if we were like that? Like, when we lost touch with our own self. That's what, like, Krishna's inside you. It's all inside you. So it's not, we're not talking about a girl and a boy here, right? Get that? And, if that moment when we lost ourselves, when we, lost touch with our true nature, when we, got too involved in the material, or we forget who we really are, if we railed like crazy and said, no, I will not accept this, right? And said, I just go to the ice cream or online shopping, right? All those shiny things. I'll have a glass of wine instead, But if we fought like hell against that kind of separation, that's what Radha is. It's saying you turn any practice, anything becomes a spiritual practice when you just pour your love into it. Like that. And that feeling, that like, no, I will not accept this, is the way in to finally being completely whole within yourself. And so she's screaming and she's yelling, and he's like, I don't even understand this girl. She's crazy. And actually, Krishna had another lover. Did you know this, that he had two girlfriends? He had two girlfriends. The other one's name, what was her name? Chandravali. Chandravali was his other girlfriend, but we never hear about her, right? Nobody ever talks about Chandravali, because Chandravali was proper. Chandravali always made sure her hair was just right, and Chandravali always had the perfect jewelry on, and when Krishna talked to Chandravali, he had to make sure that he was like saying the right thing and being a really good boy, and Radha was the opposite of that. Radha was just messy and wild and crazy, and she would scream at him sometimes, and that's Radha. Like, who's the one we remember? It's Radha, right? We're not talking about the other one. They say Radha's love, Chandravali's love was like, it was like honey. No, it was like ghee. Sorry, Chandravali's love was like ghee, which is refined, right? Very refined, cooked and cooked. Radha's love was like honey, just primal and wild. And she would even say, Krishna would wear garlands around his neck, and the bees would sometimes come. And she would say, I just want to die so I can come back as a bee and just hang around by his sweet lips all the time. Isn't that so sweet? So, I mean, it could be sweet or it could be kind of scary, right? So it's scary if it takes you away from yourself. But if it takes you further towards yourself and your wholeness, then that's where it's a really good thing. And so Radha and Krishna, they grew up together. They spent a lot of time together, but eventually Krishna had to leave. I mean, they grew up, they had responsibilities. Krishna had a big palace waiting for him. He had to go take on his duties as a king. This is like Krishna of the Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna. And he had to leave Radha. And they were both devastated. How could they even imagine a life without each other? And they left, and Krishna would cry, and he said, how is it that all three worlds for me have turned into Radha? He would see Radha everywhere in everything. And Radha too, she was making out with the trees, and she was seeing his face in the butter, and she was calling the cows by his name, and everything turned into Krishna for her. And so some time goes by, and Krishna has a new best friend. And his best friend, his name is Uddhava. And Uddhava is really smart. He studies, he reads the Vedas, he knows all the mantras, and one day he goes to Krishna and he says, listen, man, I'm your best friend, and I should have a title. Why don't I have a title? I want to be a Maharishi. I want to be a great sage. And so Krishna, with a little twinkle in his eye, says, yes, of course, I'll give you anything. You're my best friend, but will you do me a favor? Will you go and check on Radha and the gopis for me? It's been so long since I've seen them. And Uddhava says, yes, of course, I'll do that, of course. So he makes the long journey back to Vrindavan. And what do you think he thinks he's going to find? Right? Radha wasting away, all the gopis just miserable, just shadows of themselves because they've been so far, for so long, separated from their beloved. And so he goes and he finally finds the gopis, and they're in the forest where they used to be, and he peeks through the trees and he sees them and he's shocked because they're not only not wasted away, they're in total, absolute ecstasy and bliss. He's watching, and even he's a super accomplished yogi, and he's never experienced bliss like what he's seeing in these women. And he's so confused, and he's watching Radha make out with trees. And he's thinking, like, I think they've gone mad. I think they've all gone completely mad. And so Radha sees him and catches her eye, and she comes over, and she's laughing and singing. And Uddhava says, oh, Radha, are you okay? I've come to give you a message from Krishna. And she laughs, and she says, we don't need your message from Krishna. And he's so confused, and he's thinking, I've got to help her. She's clearly gone mad, and I've got to help her. And so he says, look, sit down, okay? Let me make you a nice little spot to sit. Sit down and just close your eyes. And close your eyes and just focus on Krishna, and I promise you'll find him there in your heart. And she falls down laughing. And now Uddhava is really embarrassed. He turns red. He's like, why is she laughing at me? She says, oh, Uddhava, your heart is so dry that you have to close your eyes to see Krishna? She says, we see him everywhere without ever closing our eyes. And she laughs, and so she teaches Uddhava about love. When he thinks he's coming to teach her something, she says, you've got Krishna right next to you. It's so easy, right? When your beloved is right beside you, then the love is right there. It's right on the surface. It just bubbles right up. But what happens when they go away? Then you have to dig in, right? You have to go a little deeper to find it. And the further away they go, the further inside your own heart you have to go. Especially, if you've ever gotten your heart broken, you know this, or lost someone that you really loved, and when they go away and they're gone for a long time, like, you got to get connected back in here. And that's what Radha realized. Like, wait, it never was out there. Krishna's been here the whole time. It's always here. It started right here. He lives here. And so Uddhava goes back to Krishna. And Krishna, of course, Krishna knows everything. And Krishna says, so my friend, are you ready to be a Maharishi? And Uddhava says, no, thank you. I don't want to be a Maharishi. And now Krishna's a little confused. He says, well, what can I do for you then? And Uddhava says, I'd like to please be a blade of grass. Right, now Krishna's confused. And he says, I don't understand. I'm God. I'm your best friend. I could do anything for you. You want to be grass? And Uddhava says, not just any blade of grass. I want to be one little blade of grass on the forest floor in Vrindavan. So that just maybe, if I'm lucky, Radha will step on me. And just a little bit of her devotion will fall upon my head, and I'll understand how to love. So beautiful, isn't it? So that's the kind of love that gets you through. When you love so fiercely and so deeply that you pass through that doorway and you realize everything is love. And you practice on somebody so you can pick somebody. You don't have to tell them. There's a beautiful story in that book, in the book that you had, the Awakening Shakti book, where she talks about, I think it's friends of hers, said they look at each other to inspire the Radha Shakti. Basically, is to treat your beloved as God. Like, you look at this person and you say, this person is the divine in human form, and you treat them like that. And you learn how to pick somebody easy. Like, don't pick your enemy or somebody that really gets under your skin. Like, start with somebody that it bubbles to the surface, it's easy, and they're there, and they're in front of you quite often. And you just, as often as you can, you look at them and you think, wow, there's God come to me in human form. How amazing is that? How lucky am I? And in all the ways that the divine will show up, even when it annoys you, or even when it can be selfish or tired, and you just try to see the divine in all of it, and especially if you argue. So in this story, she talks about her friends who have this tradition of bowing to each other, and it's really sweet to just, and maybe it might freak your partner out if you do that, and you bow to them and you say, I see God in you. So you might kind of do it in secret if you need to, but if they're down with it, talk to them and do it and say, let's try this every morning, every night, bow to each other and say, I see the divine in you. And just notice if it shifts. And I think especially if you have sharp words with each other, or something you feel like there's some friction there. Try it. See what happens. Turn your relationship into the pathway to the divine. It really works. It's amazing. That's Radha. Who's the Radhas in the house? Yeah. Oh, it's hard being a Radha. That's why I'm always like, come on, Kali and Saraswati. All right, so we should do Durga because we don't have that much time. Time goes so fast. So that was your Radha Mudra, right? So that one is the one. We can try it one more time. So backs of the hands face each other, and then you hook your last 3 fingers, touch these 2 together, and this is the cave of the heart. Right? So this one reminds you to go deep, especially when you feel separated. Separated from your beloved, separated from yourself, right? Separated from your own good nature. Sometimes we lose it. That's okay. So this one helps you come home. This one helps you remember that way deep in there, you're not broken. Right? One of my teachers, Joshua Green, he says, all love, everything that we do as a human being, all of our relationships that we have, anything we want, long for, it's all because we had this first heartbreak. It was our separation from the divine. And we're trying to fix that. So the only thing you can fix it with is divine love. So one of the ways in Radha Shakti is to just practice. Be so fierce and unconditional with your loving. Be a love maniac. And the door will open for you. You can relax that. If you need to at any point, like shake your legs out or anything, you can do whatever you need to do to get comfy. And then we will tell the story of the fortress. Durga means fortress. This is another really good kind of social one. And guess what? It's a demon. And the demon does yoga. The demon gets really, really powerful. His name is Mahisha. And Mahisha gets so powerful, of course, and Brahma comes to him and says, good job, my friend. You know, Brahma, our old grandpa that hands out the candies, says, what can I give you? And this demon, like all the demons, he says, well, I want to be invincible. I want nothing to kill me. And Brahma says what he always says, well, look, even I can't do that. What's born must die. You know that, but I'll let you choose by whose hand you die. And the demon, this is his big mistake, he says, easy, let it be by the hand of a woman, because no woman will ever hurt me. Mistake number 1. And so he thinks he's invincible, he really does. And he goes and he's just conquering and he's stealing and he's burning things down and he's just being a total and utter menace in the world. And all the gods and all the goddesses, none of them can defeat him. No one is powerful enough to defeat Mahisha. Shiva tries with his trident, he gets thrown back. Vishnu tries, he gets thrown back. Finally, they're exhausted, they're frustrated, they're sad, they're so mad because evil is winning. And they feel like this is just not fair. You know, here we are, we're the good guys, and we can't do anything against this major force because he's got this power. And so they all get together, and they all come into a circle. So Shiva's there, and Vishnu's there, and Hanuman is there, and Lakshmi is there, and everybody's there. All the gods and goddesses are there, and they're sharing. It's kind of like this. And they get a circle with their people, and they're going through something, and they're talking about it like, you know, this sucks, and they're sharing their frustration, and they're sharing their sadness, and they're really feeling it. They're letting themselves go into that frustration, and to not ignore it, to not pretend like it's not there, but to talk about it in a way that works, you know, that they're not just wildly acting out and throwing a fit, but they're really getting together like, what do we do about this? And so as they talk, they each start to feel this kind of warmth in the pit of their belly, this fire that starts to rise from their belly, and they feel it move upward, and they're getting more and more like, all right, we've got to stop this. This is not okay. And it's moving up, this feeling of warmth, and it moves up into their hearts, and something happens when it gets to their hearts. It transforms. And instead of this kind of rage and anger, it becomes more, all right, we got to help each other. Like, we can't let this happen to our friends and our loved ones. So what can we do that's for the good of all beings everywhere, right? That's the compassion. And then it moves up even further into their throats. And Vishnu is the first one to open his mouth. And even he's surprised. He has no idea it's going to happen. He opens his mouth and this light, this brilliant red light, pours out of his mouth. He's like, what? And then Shiva opens his mouth. And blue light pours out of his mouth. And one by one goes around the circle. And each god opens their mouth. And this light, different colored light, pours out of it. So that all this light is coming from every direction. And when the last one opens his mouth, all the light meets in the center of the circle. And it's so bright that everyone has to look away. And when they look back, there she is. She's riding her furry cat. She's got a tiger. In some stories, it's a lion that she's riding. And she's naked at first. She's got all these arms.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, primal. And of course they're like, oh, goddess can't be primal, let's put some clothes on her. And actually, here's the funny part. The first thing they do is they give her earrings. So she's also kind of the opposite of Saraswati. So they decorate her with earrings and bangles, and they give her a beautiful red silk sari, and they've got her all set to go, and they look, and she's got all these arms, and they think, well, she needs some weapons too. So when she's got herself adorned, they each give her their weapon. So Shiva gives her his trident. Vishnu gives her his discus, and Hanuman gives her his mace, and Indra gives her his thunderbolt, and Ganesha gives her his axe, and on and on and on around the circle until in every arm she's got a different weapon. She's like the ultimate multitasking mom, ready to take care of any problem, so whatever comes at her, she's ready for it. And so she jumps off of her tiger. She leaps into the air, and she let out this fierce battle cry like, ah! And way, way, way off in his kingdom, Mahisha, all of a sudden, his heart gets cold. He thinks he might have heard something, but he's not sure. But he gets this real bad feeling in his chest. Right? And normally, that's a good sign, like, hey, maybe I should stop doing the stupid things I'm doing. But he doesn't listen, so that's mistake number 2. He just says, it's probably nothing. I'm all powerful, I have nothing to worry about. And he goes on doing whatever he wants and destroying everything. So Durga gets on her tiger, and she rides right over to the gates of Mahisha's kingdom. And his man is stationed outside, and he says, who are you? And she says, well, I've come here to kill your master. And he kind of laughs, and he's stunned. Meanwhile, Mahisha's looking out. He's too chicken to actually even go out there. He's looking out from behind the curtain. And so the man comes back, and he tells Mahisha, and Mahisha's looking, and he thinks, well, she's really pretty. He says, you go tell her that she can have my kingdom if she'll be my wife. And so he goes and relays the message to Durga, and she'll have none of that. She says, okay, fine. I'll be his wife if he can defeat me in battle. Okay, now the war is on. And so Mahisha, though, because he's chicken, he does not go after her himself. He calls his strongest men. I mean, this is like Game of Thrones stuff. Like these huge, right? Like that giant guy from Game of Thrones. Like they're giant. They're like 20 feet tall, and they've got axes and bows and arrows, and they're fierce and armor and like scary, scary guys. And she's one little goddess. And she's got her weapons, but she's just one. But she does not lose it. It's the best part. She doesn't ever lose her cool. She sees this huge army of terrifying warriors come charging at her. She doesn't freak out. She doesn't scream or yell or right away reach for her weapons. You know what she does? She sits down. She goes and she finds a rock, and she sits, and she arranges her skirt. And she takes her hands in Jnana Mudra and closes her eyes, and she drops into her heart. And she meditates, and she just asks the universe, okay, what should I do now? What's the best for all beings here? And then her third eye opens. And from her third eye pours an army of goddesses, all with weapons in their hands. And these goddesses, they kill the guys in like 2 seconds flat. Just slashing, killing, stabbing until it's just a sea of demons on the ground. And so now Mahisha is like peering behind the curtain. Now he's shaking in his boots. He knows this is really a bad thing. So he's got to fight her himself. And so he still won't do it as himself. He takes the form first of a bull, and he starts to charge at her, and she gets her sword and she cuts the bull, and as soon as she cuts the bull, he turns into an elephant. And the elephant tries to wrap its trunk around the tiger's leg to pull it out from underneath her, and she cuts his trunk off with her axe. And as soon as she does that, turns into a huge warrior, 100 feet tall, and she pierces through him with a sword, and on it goes. He keeps transforming. Isn't it like that? Like you think you've taken care of the problem, and then all of a sudden there's another problem. And so on it goes until finally she says, you know what? Enough of this. I'm done with you. She leaps up off of her tiger. She lets out that cry again, fierce. You can hear it in all three worlds. And she comes down upon Mahisha, who is now a boar. He's turned himself into a boar. And she lands on him with the soft underbelly of her foot. She lands her foot right on his neck. And as she does, she looks down at him, and he looks up at her. And when he looks up at her, all he can see is love. All he sees is this beautiful motherly goddess just looking at him with love. And she looks down at him, and she is looking at him with love because she sees all the pain, right? Because anybody who would be that awful, anyone who needs that much power, who wants to hurt people, harm people so much, they're only doing it because they're feeling so much pain inside. And so she sees him. And that's all he's ever wanted, was to be seen. All he's ever wanted was just to have someone look at him just like that. Like, I see you and I love you. And so he looks back up at her, and his last words as the breath leaves his body is, Ma. And he dies, and he reaches enlightenment. He dies in a state of total bliss. And Durga gets back on her tiger and rides off into the sunset. She's pretty awesome. So Durga is like, she's the fortress. That means fortress. So she's the one, like when nobody else can do it. When you feel like you are at your wit's end, when you just like, it's the last ditch effort, when you gotta get super tenacious and just like get it done, that's Durga. It's that kind of energy. It's like pull yourself up from your bootstraps, like dig in, call upon every last ounce of strength and power that you got. But the softness, right? She doesn't kill him with her sword or her axe or her trident. She kills him with the most, perhaps, I think, you ever step on a Lego? Yeah, right? So maybe the most vulnerable part of our body. It's so sweet, that part. And so maybe our vulnerability is actually our greatest power. Take your hands, interlace them. Not all the way to the webbing, but almost. Right here, like a fortress over your heart. Vajra Pradama means unshakable trust, unshakable faith. And this is that one, we did it yesterday too, that reminds you that you're right where you need to be. That this place you are, God circled on a map just for you. And that no matter what the challenge you're faced with, that you got the tools, that you're prepared. You can take on any battle. And these battles, you know, the story of Durga, it's the battle of the heart. So the demon, it changes form all the time, but it's always something that's happening inside our own heart right now. You can keep your hands there if you like, or you can let them go, and we'll finish with a mantra to Durga. So this mantra is asking the goddess Dehi, we say Dehi, it's Devi, it's the same thing, so we're going to say Dehi. And it's saying, Goddess, please give me beauty, Rupa, but not outer beauty. It's the beauty that comes from inside. And please give me the strength to defeat my enemies, but not the ones outside, the ones inside. So, call and response. I'll sing a line, you sing it back to me. Rupam Dehi, Jayam Dehi, Yasho Dehi, Tvisho Jahi Jaya. Rupam Dehi, Jayam, Jayam Dehi, Yasho, Yasho Dehi, Tvisho, Tvisho Jahi. Again. Rupam Dehi, Jayam Dehi, Yasho Dehi, Tvisho Jahi. Again. Rupam Dehi, Jayam Dehi, Yasho Dehi, Tvisho Jahi. One more. Rupam Dehi, Jayam Dehi, Yasho Dehi, Tvisho Jahi. You know this part, you can just jump in. I want to know what love is. Like you know it. I want you to show me. I want to feel. I want to feel what love is. I know you can show me. Rupam, Rupam Dehi, Jayam Dehi, Yasho Dehi, Tvisho Jahi. Again. Rupam Dehi, Jayam Dehi, Yasho Dehi, Tvisho Jahi. Now listen. Mahishasura Nirnasi, Bhaktanam Sugade Namaha. You want to try that? So it's the one who defeated Mahisha. So it's Mahishasura. Asura is demon. Nirnasi, Bhaktanam Sugade Namaha. Just do your best. Mahishasura Nirnasi, Bhaktanam Sugade Namaha. Rupam, Rupam Dehi, Jayam Dehi, Yasho Dehi, Tvisho Jahi. Two more. Rupam Dehi, Jayam Dehi, Yasho Dehi, Tvisho Jahi. Rupam Dehi, Jayam Dehi, Yasho Dehi, Tvisho Jahi. You can bring your palms together and Anjali Mudra by your head, towards your hands, towards all those goddesses and gods inside your heart, and honoring all those very wonderful and incredible and complicated parts of yourself. We'll take a last bow and honor each other as well. Namaste. Namaste. Thank you all so much for listening. If you have questions, I might have answers. I don't know. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But yeah, if you want to know anything about any other deities or any particular one that you find interesting, sometimes I have some answers. Or if you want to learn how to play any of those chants, you can take a video, I can show you.
I think the vulnerability is our weapon.
Vulnerability is our strength,
Strength.
I think. Yeah, and weapon, I suppose. I mean, I guess not so much weapon, but it's where our power comes from. Don't you think? That the people who try to hold it all together are kind of brittle, like it's going to fall apart. It's like a glass house. if you're not really letting yourself be fully generous and loving and seen and kind. What do you think? Or any other thoughts on that?
And
That's
those
a
are
big
all
question.
vulnerabilities?
Those are what?
Those are all, I can't say the word.
Vulnerabilities? What do you think
Kindness
is
and love and-
vulnerability?
I
Yeah.
suppose they are.
Just kind of feminine, because I think men sometimes don't want to express their vulnerability to show that side. They think it's a weakness, but
That makes
it is
sense.
a strength.
Yeah. that
There's
does make sense.
a list, you know Brene Brown?
Mhm.
Yeah, she has in one of her books, I forget which one, she lists like the 20, where she lists all those things, it's like the 20 or 25 places where people feel the most vulnerable. Like, what does vulnerability look like? It looks like, your friend, like talking to your friend and finding out they have cancer. It looks like your kid not getting first chair in the band concert. It looks like asking your partner for sex, that kind of, it's like all those things. That's vulnerable. Like, what else is it? It's like,
It's kind of like humility.
It's
like you were saying
humility,
earlier,
yeah.
humility is about death of the ego, kind of, removal of the ego. So it's a way to connect also, because when you're vulnerable with someone else, it allows them to be vulnerable with you, and that's like where you find out like the most interesting information that like brings you closer to each other.
yeah, like she could have just killed him with her sword, but instead she got to have that beautiful moment, like where she let herself be seen too. They both let each other be seen to each other, and connection.
It's when you're real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
Good
thank
question.
you. Good question. Yeah.
Whatever happened to her, you were saying Radha, she made a huge fuss because she knew that, the impermanence of like,
Yeah.
this very sweet moment. So how does Radha like overcome that? How does she?
They actually do meet one time later on, and they have this quick little like, they see each other, and then they're separated again, and they both come to that like they see each other everywhere. They don't need the physical contact. She's fine. They're both fine after that, because they've walked through that door. They've transcended. That's what that kind of love does. You transcend the material world, and so both Krishna and Radha with each other got to this point where they didn't even need the actual presence of the other being anymore to have that same experience of love. So that's when we realize, that's when it goes not fatal attraction. That's when you realize, whoa, it's like this has been about me the whole time, about connecting to myself and my own divine nature. So she gets that awakening. And that's why.
I can do that with my dog.
With your dog, yeah, it's really easy
But
with a
it's
pet.
also because that's, it's non-judgmental,
Mm-hmm.
so there's no
So
complication.
practice on the dog,
Right.
and then work
I
up
don't
to a
need
right,
Right.
Move into the
That's
and move on
nature.
to a person.
But it's interesting
If that's where you want to go.
that it's with an
that's-
animal and not another human being.
Yeah, people are really complicated.
Yeah.
People are hard to love.
Well, they have opinions.
Yeah. And people want things. Everybody wants something
I
from
mean, to be a
someone
fish,
else.
right?
Like, it's hard. People are hard. But maybe we could do it. Maybe we could all do it in this lifetime.
And
turn
babies
somebody
and
into
children,
God.
that's also
Yeah.
much-
Well, that's why Krishna
That's so
came
pure.
as a baby too. So that people could experience that. Like
Mhm.
that's an easy way into love. Like, a little blue baby who just giggles and does, mischievous things. That taught people how to love. That opened their hearts. So baby is a good way in. Yeah, there's a million stories about Krishna as a baby. Those are fun. There's so many stories. We only did like the littlest sliver of a fingernail of all the stories that are there. So dig in and try to find them. There's no good books. The only good book is that one that Carla has, Awakening Shakti, has some good goddess stories in it. But otherwise, I don't have. That's the number one question I get after a workshop. People write to me and say, "But what book can I read?"
Maybe you should write one.
I know, that's the plan. That's why I do
I've
the
thought
teaching.
about doing that for
Yeah, I have. So what I do have, if you liked the class yesterday, I have an online course for teachers. It's called Crushing on Krishna, with a K, crushingonkrishna.com. And it's got 6 Krishna stories, and then it has worksheets and mantras and mudras and asana sequences. And it's how do I put it all together? and how do I learn how to take the stories and pull the meanings out of them. So the worksheets are designed, there are all these questions that help you figure out what's the story about, where is it going, how does it relate to asana, how can I work it into the asana, how can I make the whole class feel like the story instead of just throwing it on top and then teaching an asana class. So if you're interested in that, it's online. It's on my website too, kellycamyoga.com. So that could help a little bit.
Marla has an idea for you.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you could have a one-woman show for sure.
This is it. You're at it.
Bring it to, well, I mean, bring it.
Bigger
you know,
theater.
Yeah, bring the yoga stories to life.
Yeah, I have a friend who's not a yogi. She's a writer, and she wants me to do that. I put it on her platform, Andrea Ball, you know her, right? And to just do intro to yoga storytelling for everybody. So one day it'll have, it's the follow through that's the hard part.
The ideas.
I got all kinds of ideas. But for now, they're there on my website, and the book will come, and there's that teacher's website also, if you're interested in that. If you want more, I can write it down for you. Or
Where did you gain all of your knowledge and education?
Everywhere. A lot. My teacher, mostly Douglas Brooks, is where I get my stories. Or I hear something and then just research it like crazy and find all the different ones. And like I was saying, most of them are not so pro-female, like girl power. Especially with Kali, there's a lot of stories about how she just has to be subjugated and the goddess is too powerful. And so I have to really research to find ones that are good for us. Or sometimes I make them up.
That's kind of the beauty of it, because it's a tradition of storytelling, and every time it gets handed down, it changes a little bit just through history, right?
We're in a different time and a different culture too, and it can't be all of this like keep the woman under your thumb thing. So we have to make new stories up. So yeah, a lot of them, they're way embellished too, which I'm sure you can tell. I'll get the framework of a story and then I add all kinds of stuff to it.
Makes it the fun part.
Yeah.
Storytelling is all about.
Yeah. And it took me a long time too. This has been a few years of walking around my house telling myself stories all the time and researching. Wikipedia actually is